if what you're working on, like, so let's say you want to write a book, which lots of people say they want to write a book. Very few people actually do, which is fine because sometimes even just the journey of sort of experimenting with writing a book can be really valuable.
Yes.
If you spend 15 minutes a day writing, you can get out about 250 words ish in 15 minutes. And if you do that every day for a little over 400 days, that's 50,000 words. That's a book.
Yeah.
So
Yes.
where were you 400 days ago? And would you like to be holding a book in your hand right now? Because you could be.
Yes. Welcome to the Soulful Sound Podcast, where you will find conscious, inspiring content to support your healing and transformation. Now, before we jump into today's episode, I want to extend a heartfelt invitation for you to be part of our community, where more insightful conversations await to guide you to heal, grow, and thrive. Simply click the subscribe button. It means the world to me. Your support, your comments, everything is truly incredible. And we're only at the beginning of this awesome journey together. I'm so excited to be on this adventure with you, and your subscription is a valuable part of making it all happen. Thank you so much for joining, sending you love, healing, and sound wherever you are. Welcome back, everyone, to a new episode on the Soulful Sound Podcast. I am joined by the awesome Sam Bennett, who is the author of Get It Done, Start Right Where You Are, and most recently, The 15-Minute Method, the surprisingly simple art of getting it done. A writer, speaker, actor, and creativity and productivity specialist, Sam is the founder of a company committed to helping overwhelmed creatives and frustrated overachievers get unstuck. Welcome, welcome, Sam.
Thank you so much. Thanks so much for having me. Hi, everybody.
Yes. Now, I have to say that I love all the conversations that I jump into. But when I saw what you do and I looked at your book, I got super excited because I am one of those people who's all about high performance, productivity, getting things done, being efficient and organized. So I'm like, whoa, the 15-minute method. I can't wait to learn more. So before we jump into your book, tell me a little bit about you and what brought you into this work, a little bit of your journey, whatever you wish to share.
Yes. It was completely inadvertent. This was not the plan. Funny how life does that, doesn't it? Like, oh, by the way, you're going this way. It's like, but I thought I was, oh, okay.
Yes.
So I started out as an actor. I was one of those kids who put on plays in the living room in the backyard, and I went to theater camp and I did all the plays in school and studied theater. And then I grew up in Chicago, and I ended up getting a job at the Second City Theater, which meant that I was working with all of the people we know to be the great minds of now, Adam McKay and Rachel Dratch and Steve Carell and Stephen Colbert and Nia Vardalos and Ian Gomez and Amy Sedaris and like but we were all just kids,
That's beautiful.
going down to do a show for $75. And but it was a lot of fun and I learned a ton. And then I went to LA and I had one of those careers that, went well. I mean, I did a lot of theater, I did a fair amount of TV, I did a lot of radio stuff with a lot of celebrities. Like there was a lot of cool stuff, but none of it was enough to support me. And so I just had a ton of different jobs and gigs and projects and shows and producing and all this stuff. And along the way, I just got really interested in this question of how do highly creative people make decisions?
Mm.
When you could do almost anything. I mean, highly creative people are often good at a lot of things. How do you know what to do? Or even once you picked what to do, well, then how do I promote what I do? Should I have a podcast? Should I buy advertising? Should I stand on the street corner with a sandwich board? Like, what do I do?
Yeah.
Especially since the fact of the matter is there's no right way.
Yeah.
It's just your way.
Mm-hmm.
So I have one of those minds that just went, well, how would I figure that out? I'm like, oh, well, I guess if you answered these questions in this order, that might take you to a certain place. So I just started to create a lot of worksheets and exercises and sort of little imagination games. And I started teaching a class called Get It Done. And I was like, that's the terrible name. Like, I'm gonna have to change that. And now it's like my whole brand.
Yes, love
No,
that.
I was teaching it, in a church basement in Van Nuys, California for maybe I was charging people $75 and feeling very weird about it. Um, and it just grew. I really loved it. And I started to do it more and more. And then it turned into the book. And Seth Godin endorsed the book, and that was kind of epic. And I found that I really loved entrepreneurship and I
Mm.
really loved being an author. So I still think of myself as an actor, and anybody who says that teaching isn't acting is lying. And anybody who says that being on doing promotion isn't acting is lying. As you may suspect, I have told this story before. Uh, so I feel like I
Love it.
still get to do a lot of the things I loved about acting, but I also get to do a lot more things and reach a lot more people.
Beautiful. Well, I love that. I love that it was the start was certainly joyous, what made you come alive. There was a level of curiosity in that. It's like, well, how does this work? Which I think certainly it's so important as adults that we remember that play and curiosity, because we lose so much of it sometimes when we think work. And which is why I was really curious about your background and, the fact that you are telling people how to get it done in a very practical way, because everyone wants to know. It's not an easy thing to maneuver or conquer sometimes. Like, there's so much to do now. How do we get it done?
So much to do and so much information to process. I mean,
Yeah.
sometimes I dream of like being a homesteader, in 1870, and you'd like see a newspaper once every 3 months or something. It seems very restful. What if all I had to do was, collect the eggs from the chickens?
That's so beautiful. So obviously then you've written this book, The 15-Minute Method, and I want to know a little bit more about what inspired you to write it. Is it based on what you've just shared, that kind of coming out of the workshops and the experience you had? Is there another kind of impetus behind that?
Yeah, I mean, it came out. I've been beating the drum around the 15-minute thing for forever,
Right.
because one of the things I notice about highly creative people, highly productive people, overthinkers, perfectionists, neurospices of all stripes, is that we often have very big ideas
Mm.
and we can see them in our mind and they're beautiful.
Mm.
And then we're immediately overwhelmed because how would a person even begin to do that, right? Or we have an idea of something we want to do, but we get inhibited, well, what if it doesn't work? Well, what if I put a lot of time in and then it fails? Well, what if this, what if that, what if this, what if that?
Mm.
And what I notice is that probably, I don't know, I'm going to make this up. Let's say 90% of what you need to know about how to do the things in your life that you want to do, you learn by doing.
Mm.
You thinking it through over and over and again inside of your mind, that's not helping.
Yeah.
That's just psyching you out. So start somewhere.
Yeah.
Do the 15 minutes. And so here's the people are always like, what is the 15 minutes method, Samantha? The 15-minute method is subversively simple. The 15-minute method is you spend 15 minutes a day on something that matters to you.
Yes.
That's it. That's the whole banana.
I love it.
15 minutes a day on something that matters to you. I don't care if it matters to anybody else, right? This is not a time to catch up on your to-do list or empty out your email box and make a dentist appointment. No. What matters to you? Because again, I see we get everything done for everybody else all day.
Mm.
But the thing that would really make a difference to you, the thing that lights you up inside, the things that you love to do, never even make it onto the list.
Yeah.
But when you put them on the list, when you say, okay, I'm going to spend 15 minutes a day playing that guitar I haven't picked up since sophomore year in high school. I'm going to spend 15 minutes out in the garden with the sun on my face. I'm going to spend 15 minutes, learning how to do foot reflexology or tying flies or planning my trip to Italy, or I don't know, whatever it is you want to do. It's amazing how much you can get done in 15 minutes.
Mm-hmm.
It's amazing how much you can get done in 15 minutes every day for a week, or a month, or a year, or 10 years, or 60 years. It's amazing the response of the world when you are touching something every day and it becomes part of your life, like, I don't know, kind of lets the angels know you're serious.
I love that. So I want to break that down a bit because I completely resonate with it. And I definitely have those practices within my life, and I can see how they ripple out, right? Where you're kind of cultivating joy, you're building the consistency muscle and all of these things. So
Yes.
my question's a little bit more practical. So for those listening who are, okay, so I've got 100 things on my to-do list. I've got a lot to do, whether it's work, home, family, all mixed in. I am feeling overwhelmed. If I carve out 15 minutes to do something that I love doing, how is that going to change all the things that still need to get done?
That's a fantastic question. Right now, that's a little like saying, I'm starving, but I don't have time to eat. So I'm just going to keep going without eating.
Yeah.
And hope that that will somehow get me full. It's like,
Yeah.
no, you have to eat.
Yes,
Make
exactly.
a sandwich and do the rest of the thing. And we all know this. And I can hear someone out there is thinking like, well, but that would be selfish. I can't take time for myself. Work needs me. My kids need me. My people need me. And I'm like, yeah, they need you, but not for 15 minutes. They don't. Like, get over yourself. They don't need you for 15 minutes. And what's selfish is you walking around exhausted and stressed out and with no sense of humor, and the rest of us have to deal with you like that. That is selfish. You're putting that burden on us to do. On the other hand, you take 15 minutes for something that matters to you, and all of a sudden you're a little calmer. There's a light in your eyes. You can listen better. You're less reactive.
Yes.
Like, we love that version of you. Please be that version.
Yeah.
Right? And it's the spillover effect. It's like, I don't know, it's like when you first fall in love with somebody, or when you make it to the gym first thing and you just spend all day being like, that's right, I'm a little bit amazing. How are you?
I love it. Oh my God.
It levels out everything, because the rest of it, then all that to-do stuff, all those million things, they're still going to be there. You're not going to get to that list.
And I love that you're bringing so much humor into it. One, because I love your humor and I love to laugh, but also to really make light, but not make light of this. It really is as simple as that, right? Which is what I'm referring to is you saying what's selfish is you doing all of that and then turning up as this monster that people have to deal with, right? That's selfish. And it's such a beautiful reframe, because often we think that by doing all the stuff for people that we're showing up for them, as opposed to, look, show up for yourself, give yourself the love and attention that you are giving everyone else, because you deserve it, very much in that self-worth place. And then everyone's going to benefit from that overflowing cup, which I think is so beautiful.
Yes. Especially when, if what you're working on, like, so let's say you want to write a book. Lots of people say they want to write a book. Very few people actually do. Which is fine, because sometimes even just the journey of sort of experimenting with writing a book can be really valuable.
Yes.
If you spend 15 minutes a day writing, you can get out about 250 words-ish in 15 minutes. And if you do that every day for a little over 400 days, that's 50,000 words. That's a book.
Yeah.
So where were you 400 days ago? And would you like to be holding a book in your hand right now? Because you could be.
Yes. Yeah, that's beautiful. And you spoke a bit at the start about, I like the word neurospicy. I don't think I've heard that before, but I really like that. So when it comes to people who would say, look, I have ADHD, or people who might be highly creative or gifted, or whatever word might feel right for those listening, how does this 15-minute strategy help in those cases?
Yeah, it's incredibly helpful for all of the neurodiverse. And I'm so glad that we finally started saying, like, wait a minute, not every brain is the same. Yes. What? And those of us who grew, when I was growing up, we were just the weird kids. There was no diagnosis. We were just weird.
Yeah, exactly.
Sensitive, we were all the things. Now it's cool. There's a diagnosis. If that works for you. And if not, don't.
Yeah.
But especially for ADD, ADHD, ODD, the time constraint of 15 minutes of like, look, this isn't going to be all day. We're not going to, this is not going to
Yes.
eat your life. We're just going to take steady movement. And I have a thing, you can see it on my website. It's called the Daily Practicum.
Mm.
It's a subscription thing. People pay me for this. It's hilarious. But they pay me to show up on Zoom for 15 minutes a day. We do it at 12 noon Eastern. So it's 5, right now it's British summertime. So 5 o'clock EST. And we turn on the camera, we say hello. I set the timer for 15 minutes. Everybody turns their camera off or puts their heads down. 15 minutes later, timer goes off. And everyone looks up at me with this like post-orgasmic glow.
Oh, beautiful. I love that.
They're like,
yes.
I did it. I did it. Yeah. I called that person I've been putting off calling for 6 weeks.
Yes.
I cleared this bunch of the pile of paper. I went outside and sat in the garden for 15 minutes. I did my prayer and meditation. I danced in the kitchen. I groomed an animal, like whatever it is that like, you're going to feel great at the end of 15 minutes. It's amazing. And there's something about, again, the time limit of it, doing it in a group, body doubling, parallel play, whatever you want to call it. I call it, we're tribal animals and we like to be in a group.
Yes. And there's accountability.
It's on your calendar, right? It's on your calendar, which makes a huge difference. There's a little bit of like mommy sees you,
Yes.
There's all kinds of things that really and then you get to say like, hey, I did this thing, and everybody goes, yeah, you're wonderful, and we all feel a little good. And,
yes. And I think that's a beautiful setup, because a lot of the people who are having challenges with, the overwhelm and feeling stuck and everything, as you said, it's often like giving everything to everybody else, doing for everybody else. So actually the accountability piece is probably quite a high motivator, because in a way they're also showing up for the others, not just for themselves, but for themselves first. But that's really pretty beautiful. I can see why people would come and do that.
It's wonderful. And there's some people show up every day. Some people are there sometimes. Some people never show up in person, but just the fact that it is on their calendar every day reminds them to do it. So that's worth it to them to just have it as a recurring event. And yeah, it's beautiful. And it's beautiful to be part of a community where, and I really would like this to be like a global revolution. I would like to see millions of people all over the world. Like it's just a thing. Like, well, what did you do with your 15 minutes today? Oh, I did this. Oh, what did you do with your 15 minutes today? Oh, I did this. What did you do? Oh my gosh, I sat down for 15 minutes and got up 3 hours later. It was amazing. Oh, fun. Right? I stared at a blank piece of paper for 15 minutes. Excellent. Because you know what? 15 minutes of enforced boredom never hurt a person.
Oh, yeah.
Right? 15 minutes of staring at paper without reaching for your phone is turning into a deep spiritual discipline. And I would love to see it happen in offices.
Yes.
Because, when I was working full-time as an actor, I had a lot of great gigs. I never had a real job, but I had a lot of great gigs. But even of the best gigs, I always felt like I was leaving like, I don't know, at least 40% of myself in the car. They didn't care who I was as a person, and they shouldn't. They weren't paying me to be charming. They were paying me to do a job, and that's fine. But we're also people.
Yeah.
And at a time when 77% of employees are disengaged, 77%, that's almost everybody. I mean, that's a very expensive problem.
Yes.
And I think for a business to say, you know what, everybody, between 4:15 and 4:30 is your time. Between 9:45 and 10 a.m. is your time. That's, spend it on whatever you want. Don't clear out your email box. Don't take a meeting. Don't try to catch up. Do something for you. First of all, I think that's just a beautiful thing for a business to say.
Yeah, of course.
Second of all, and this is documented in a couple of different studies, when you give people the opportunity to share something about who they are as people, and I'm not talking about their private lives, that's for you and your that's private, but who you are as a person, people have better ideas. They're more engaged. They make more unusual connections. They find ways to solve problems in a way that's a little bit more innovative because you've reminded them of the fullness of themselves. Now I'm not just, Sam from sales. I'm Sam from sales, and my grandmother was Swedish, and I, love to make, I'm working on a new cookie recipe. Like, and now that person that I've never really gotten along with, Debbie from accounting, is all of a sudden like, you bake? I bake. And now we're baking buddies,
That's it. Yeah,
right?
bringing people together, at a deeper level, and that makes for better work environment and better business. It's just a win-win when we can offer that. And as you talk about ideas, because I mean, this came up when you were talking about staring at the blank page, because I do that quite often. When I'm staring at the blank page, I go into a trance and a lot of ideas fall out, right? It's just like, ooh, yeah, I love this. And then I can scribble or I can voice them. So what's your suggestion for people who are like, all the ideas are there? Because you said you can have beautiful ideas. So tell me about all the ideas and how do we pick the ones to run with?
Well, this is another advantage of the 15-minute thing is you get to play around, pick, definitely capture them. For those of you who have a lot of ideas all the time, first of all, this is not a character defect.
Yes.
People may have told you, oh, jack of all trades, master of none. Oh, she's a dilettante. Oh, like a little butterfly flying from thing to thing. No. You just have a lot of ideas. It's a beautiful thing. And some people get weird about it because they've only ever had like two. So, that's them. But for those of us who have a lot of ideas all the time, be capturing them, right? Yeah. So have some kind of capture and retrieval system. So I like index cards. I definitely like paper. Notes app on my phone, whatever it is, because as opposed to something like a journal, because journaling is about process.
Yes.
Right. But I can't count how many great ideas people have that they put in journals and then they never find them again because nobody goes back and pages through their journal. Like, no. So journal and then take a picture of it. That might, okay, but get it somewhere where you can retrieve it. But anyway, get all your ideas down. And then, you can say, okay, my 15 minutes is just going to be whichever one is speaking to me today. I'm just going to pick at random. Or this one has a little time dependence. This really has to be done before XYZ. So I'll do this one first. Or, gosh, I really want to experiment with this. So I'm going to do this one every day for a month and see where it takes me. Yes. Right. So you don't, you're not locking yourself in for the rest of your natural life. You're just going to play around. And it can be so valuable to come at your productivity with that sense of play. I remember working one time on a screenplay that I thought, oh, I got a really good idea for a screenplay. And I started writing and I was doing my own system because I was sort of intimidated by it. I'm like, well, Sam, don't try to make it perfect. Just 15 minutes a day. See what happens. Yeah, it turns out that's not my format. I banged my head against the brick wall of that screenplay for I don't know how long. And finally I was like, you know what? This is just not my bag. I should leave this to the people who really love to do it because no, playwriting, it's so weird. Playwriting, no problem. Screenwriting, can't do it. And now I know, right? Now I don't have to torture myself anymore. I can be like, okay, I gave that a try. Learned a lot. Thank you very much. Moving on. Right.
Yeah, beautiful. Again, the play and curiosity is huge. And I think that's a beautiful collaboration for handling and working with overwhelm. And I want to talk more about the overwhelm because I know that I relate to this, and you talk about the overwhelm, the problem or the challenges of overwhelm not being something on the outside, but being something on the inside. So can you talk a bit more about that piece? Because I really can relate to that.
Yeah, we do have a tendency to talk about overwhelm like it's something that the world is doing to us. But it's not. It's something you do to yourself. And I can prove it to you. Because if we look at people who have jobs in which that are chronically overwhelming, like working, in the ER, the A&E, right? Working as a first responder. I was actually recently interviewed on a local news show and I was giving this example and the newscaster said, oh, like when we're reporting on a breaking story and sometimes something terrible and tragic has happened or things are evolving really quickly and we don't always know. And I'm like, right. That is an overwhelming situation, but she herself is not overwhelmed. She's a broadcaster. This is her job.
Yeah.
So she and the person at the hospital and the person, like, they're not overwhelmed. They're doing their job, right?
Gotcha. Yes.
So it's not the circumstances, it's inside. And I think sometimes it happens when it feels like everything's sort of coming at us with the same level of intensity.
Hmm.
I think also sometimes it happens when we're not overwhelmed, we're actually underwhelmed. We're thinking about all the stuff we have to do, and we're like, uh, this bores the ass off me. Like, I don't want to do any of this stuff.
I like that. And so you think that sometimes the underwhelm, which is like, I'm so not wanting to do this, can present as overwhelm.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's a really interesting
To me, it sort of
perspective.
feels like I'm tired before I even start.
Yeah,
You're
gotcha.
like, it's like, this tells me that your spirit needs refreshing, right?
Yeah.
This is a great time to spend 15 minutes again in nature, hug under a tree, out in the
Mm,
garden, go for a run, go for a walk, call a friend, whatever it is that you
yes.
know will light you up a little bit. And then again, you come back to it and maybe it's not so bad.
I love that. Yeah, that's a really beautiful perspective, one that it hadn't crossed my mind. I'm trying to think of moments if I've confused the two. And I don't, because I've practiced very often in my life for the majority of my life doing what I love. I've always worked for myself apart from 11 months of my life. And it was always because I wanted to do what I wanted to do. And that what brought me joy and what lit me up inside. So I wondered about that. And I was like, what are the things that maybe I feel a bit underwhelmed? And it could be then some of those tasks where I'm not in my expertise, my genius zone, the place
Yep.
where I know this is what I'm here to do. And it's like the admin or some of the more mundane tasks, which maybe I might feel like that. So I would love to know more about your thoughts on that kind of, whether you call it genius zone or whatever it is, but that piece where people can spend more time there. How do they navigate then the things that they either delegate or leave behind? Again, coming back to a bit of prioritizing.
Yeah. So I'm glad you brought up Zone of Genius. So first of all,
Okay,
tip of
great.
the hat to Gay Hendricks and his
Yay.
work, right? We love Gay
Yes,
Hendricks.
yes.
And his wife Katie. We love both of them. They and this idea that everyone has a zone of genius and often multiple zones of genius. And I like to call them zones of creative genius because to me it has to do with problem solving.
Yeah, yeah.
Right?
Love that.
Creativity has to do with problem solving. First of all, let's just do that. Let's unhook creativity and artistic.
Mhm.
Everyone is creative, not everyone is artistic,
Beautiful.
right? Um, your zone of creative genius is that thing that you just have always been interested in, like kind of for no reason. Like maybe your family and friends are like, you what? You bought a book on what? You're going to an exhibit of what? Like you want to travel to where? Like and you're like, I don't know. I don't know. I'm fascinated. Um, it's that you may not have noticed how good you are at it because it comes so naturally to you. You think, well, everybody must be good at this. No, no, they're not.
Yeah.
The other way I like to describe it is if somebody woke you up in the middle of the night, it's 3 a.m. and they went, hey, a bunch of us are going to go, XYZ, and you'd be like, yeah, oh, I'm coming. Where's my shoes? I'm coming. Like what's that? Whatever that thing is, that has to do with your zone of creative genius. And the more you can bring that element into your life, the more you can make that part of your work, and people sometimes feel like, well, I can't charge for that. I mean, it's just what comes to me naturally. It's like, oh no, you can charge
Yeah.
10 times more for that. And even if you can't, like I noticed that every office has a birthday person. Every office has somebody who's made it their business to find out when everybody's birthday is and pass around the card, sign the card for Denise, it's her birthday, and there's cupcakes in the break room. And I'm like, really? That's amazing. Because I don't care about birthdays. I don't care about my birthday. I don't care about your birthday. I don't care about anybody's birthday. Not my thing.
I love
But
it.
I'm so glad it's somebody's thing,
Yes.
And it's like, this is the way this person manages to take whatever job they have and make it more lovely for them because they bring their genius. And whether that's a genius for celebration or bringing people together or acknowledgement or whatever,
Yeah.
like they're letting that shine. So yeah, I think all the stuff that has to do with your zone of creative genius should be at the top of the list
Yes.
because it will always pay off more for you. Sometimes Oh, a cardinal just landed on the tree branch outside my window. Hello. Hello, cardinal.
Bringing some bird magic.
Little bird magic. That to look at things and say like, well, yes, does this have to be done at all?
Mhm.
Does this have to be done? Does this have to be done by me? Does this have to be done at all? And is there a way for me to make it more fun for myself? You know, can I make it like other things I like to do? But also, could I 10x it? You know, that feeling of like, oh, I'm so stressed out about money. You know, I really need to make another $1,000 and I don't know where it's going to come from. So, all right, well, what if you just made another 10,000?
Yes.
Does that get a
Would
little more
you prefer
interesting?
that? Yeah. Yeah.
That'd be better. Like, oh, yeah, that's a better problem to solve. I like that problem. Let's look at that. You know, like, oh, I'm not sure I can afford another latte. It's like, okay, you know what? Let's 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 make your budget so that you can afford all the lattes for all the people. You know, like,
Yes.
stop thinking small and start thinking a little bigger. Yeah. So there's so many ways to implement this, like just wherever you are. Yeah.
Yeah, and from that kind of rolling in more about I don't know if it would be the mindset, overcoming old conditioning and patterns, a mixture of all of that. And I think what I want to pull from what you said as well is that we also set our own limits and limitations, right? The limitations of I want to get to 1,000 because that's all I think I can have or can achieve or deserve or desire or whatever it might be. And then we know that that's where we're capping our potential or possibility. So can you speak to that a bit? Because I'm sure that a lot of people that you would work with who might feel stuck in many ways are placing themselves in a self-limitation bubble of some sort at times.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And I think it can be really, even just as a mental exercise, to say like, well, you know, what if it were an extra 10,000? What if it were an extra 100,000? You know, and you sort of need to push yourself to like not into fantasy land, you know, because people always go like, well, I want $1 million. That's all. Why not just 1 million? It's like, okay, yes, but I can hear just in the tone of your voice that you've now gone into like fantasy dreamland. And I want the thing in this real life, what would feel like, oh,
Yes.
that's ambitious, but not impossible. I like setting good, better, best goals for myself.
That's nice.
Right. I've got a workshop coming up. I must have 10. I know I can get 10 people. If I can't get 10 people, there's something seriously wrong. Right. So 10 is good. 20 is better. 30 drinks are on me. Right.
Yes.
And now I have some goals and some metrics. I can start to track myself and be like, okay. And I can also stop moving the finish line for myself. Because we do that too. Like, oh, I've got this class that I'm teaching, and oh, I got, 22 people in it. I really had hoped for 30. It's like, no, 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 no. You said 10, 20, 30. You made it well past good, well into better, and you knew 30 was a stretch.
Yeah.
22 is amazing. Be happy.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And it's outside of your comfort zone where all of the growth happens, the learning, and then you can then implement what you've learned. Like you were able to play and go, no, that's not for me. I'll stick to playwriting, screenwriting, any screenwriters, and that's exactly what it is. And, also knowing that we can get support. It's not something that we have to, go all alone in. So that's an important piece.
Exactly right. I mean, sometimes people say like, oh, I've got to clean out the garage, but I need 2 free weekends, and it's never like, okay, first of all, 2 free weekends, when's that happen? Show me those on the calendar, because it's not happening. And if you did have 2 free weekends, you're not going to want to spend them cleaning out the garage. So let's do 15 minutes a day. And it's like, well, but it's the garage, it's such a big job. Doesn't have to be. Like maybe just take a cup of tea out and sort of contemplate the garage for 15 minutes. Just be there with it. And maybe the next day you do that again. And then all of a sudden you notice, wait a minute, those 7 boxes are my brother's. It's not even my stuff. Get over here. Right? And now all of a sudden it's like much easier. Here's the little game I've been playing with people lately. I don't think I've ever done this on a podcast before, so this will be exciting. Yes. All right. It's a little exercise for all of you. I want you to think of someone that if you called them, they could help you with your career. Like, so maybe it's a journalist who could write an article about you, or maybe it's, the assistant of someone famous someone that you sort of met, that you have some access to. I'm not talking about cold calling. I'm saying, well, I did kind of go to school with that person who da da da. I mean, we haven't talked in 20 years, but social media, we've kept up, whatever. Or that shopkeeper or that peer, like, oh, we could partner on something, maybe, whatever it is. Somebody like, oh, if I talk to that person, I bet we could, that would move things along quite a bit. That would be sort of a little bit of a quantum leap. Good. So that's step one of the imagination game. Who might that person be? What might you ask of them? Next, what is the thought you are immediately having? Oh, well, I don't want to bother them. Oh, my thing isn't really perfect yet. I don't know that I'd want to put it out in the world if it's not I wouldn't want them to say no. I wouldn't want to hear no from that person. Whatever that sentence is that you talk yourself out of making that phone call, that's what's keeping you stuck.
Beautiful, easy, simple, practical. Love it.
Right? Yeah. Like, well, that would be rude. Oh, so now you're spending all your time trying so hard to not be rude that you're not able to be successful.
And I love that you brought up the word perfect, because I do have a question about that. I wouldn't say that I would never really have called myself a perfectionist, but I definitely would lean towards, in the past, waiting until something was whatever I deemed to be perfect. So I don't know, this is like 10 years ago, I decided for a year to work with the mantra, good enough is the new perfect, in every area of my life. And I was my most productive. So many things that I was sitting on and waiting for this. I was just like, it's good enough. It's good enough. Good enough. Good enough. Good enough. Bam. At the end of the year, I was like, why did it take me so long to go with good enough? So can you talk about perfection or our desire to do everything well all the time?
Yeah, I mean, it's one of those things that it's a really noble and good impulse. Of course you want to do well. Of course you want to do your best work. Of course you have high standards and you don't want to let those standards down. And there's pushing it a little too far. Like, yes, you have taken a naturally good impulse and pushed it too far. And again, if that worked, I would be all in favor of it. If perfectionism worked, if you could sit there and, noodle on every possible little thing and then actually have it come out perfect.
Yeah.
I'd be, yeah, cool, do that. But it doesn't work that way. In Get It Done, I talk a lot about something that when I first had this thought almost 30 years ago, it was completely radical to me, which was get a C.
Yeah.
Get a C. In the US, we grade A, B, C, D, right? So A is best, C is passing, but not, not terrific. C is the grade that you get for showing up and doing the work. Show up, do the work, show up, do the work, show up, do the work. You're not sitting in the front row with your hand raised. You're not doing extra credit work. You're not better than everybody else. You're just showing up and doing the work.
Yeah.
And what I noticed is that for almost everything, that's plenty, right? And I also notice that your version of a C is kind of everyone else's version of an A. Like, you may have noticed that you put something out and you think, well, that's not quite right. And then everybody's like, oh, you did that? What? And you're like, oh, okay. I guess it's better than I thought it was. No one else can see that perfect version in your head.
No, exactly.
Only you have this idea of something that's supposed to be something other than what it is. Everybody else is seeing what it actually is. And we're like, that's amazing. You did a thing. And finally, if you put it out in the world and it needs to be made more perfect, then you will make it more perfect.
Yeah.
Right? Revise. Director's cut. Version 2.0. Like.
Exactly. Refine, review, reflect, all of those things. I think that's so beautiful. And as you spoke about the version in your head, because I think that's often what the issue is and the challenge. Once I realized that, you know what, I have a high standard in my work. So good enough is already a high standard. As then,
Right.
so when you bring that, as soon as I realized that, and then I started using the mantra to bring the action in alignment with that, I just thought, of course, the stuff that I'm putting out is good. And like you said, and if it isn't, I can pull it back in, do some more with it, and put it back out. And boy, do I love doing that.
Yeah. Yeah. And especially for those of us in business, every time you make a mistake, every time I screw up, first of all, my people will not hesitate to let me know.
Yes.
You will be alerted if there is a problem. Right?
Love it. Great to have those people.
Great to have those people. And it gives you a chance to show the truth of who you are.
Yeah.
I make a terrible, embarrassing mistake regularly, and I get message back, that's not correct. This is a mistake. You didn't do this right. This isn't working. And I get to say, thank you so much, for giving a crap. I mean,
Yes. Exactly.
that's amazing that you wrote me back to tell me you had a problem. That's an incredible vote,
Yes.
right? I really appreciate that. Even if what they're saying, even if I'm not loving what they're saying, I'm so appreciate that they took the time to say it.
Yeah.
So every email I respond to says, thank you so much for taking the time to write.
Mm-hmm.
Because that's how I feel. Like, that's amazing. You took the time to write.
Yes.
And then I get to say, and thank you for pointing out XYZ. And you're right. I had an idea in my head that didn't pan out, or yep, there was a technical glitch and it's my fault for not checking it, or whatever.
Yeah.
I just
Own
put
your part, whatever that might be.
own your part. And I just put up a video the other day that I had no intention. I was making a little Marco Polo for two of my closest friends. It was not a public thing at all. I look like 9 miles of bad road. I've been sobbing all day. I got no makeup on, and I was just reporting into them about something that had happened. But I was super, super vulnerable in this video, way more so than I am, again, even usually with my closest friends. And I was right in the middle of this book launch, and I thought, you need to share this.
Hmm.
And of course, my inner thought was like, no, 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 no. Oh, no.
What are you talking about?
Yes, absolutely not, Samantha. But then I was like, okay, it's true. I look terrible, but people aren't tuning into me for their beauty tips. So, and finally I thought to myself, honesty over vanity, to just let people know that sometimes it's this grim.
Yeah.
And sometimes your work will bring you to your knees in ways that you did not expect
Yes.
to go. And that's okay.
Yeah. Hmm. Yes. And I think what I love about that, and I know this about myself, but I know this when I think about the work that I do with clients, which is very much energy and using sound and voice and all of that, learning to speak up and speak out. One of the things that I noticed is that most of us crave that level of vulnerability and authenticity.
Yeah.
And for me, when I see someone doing what you just described, it inspires me to do the same. And then if that ripple effect becomes everyone knowing that it's that vulnerability is a superpower, and the authentic sharing of whatever you're feeling or experiencing in a moment is a beautiful, sacred moment, then I just see the world would be in such a better place when we're heading there anyway, but it would be in such a better place. So I love that share. Thank you so much.
Yeah. And it's a good check to, like, are you building a community of people who will support you in that?
Yeah.
Because if you have built an audience or a tribe or a client base or whatever of people who won't give you that grace,
Mm-hmm.
you might be talking to the wrong crowd.
Yeah. 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 Beautiful. Tell me about the alchemy of effort, because I like the sound of that. I want to know what that is and how it works. Talk to me about that.
Yeah, the alchemy of effort has to do with first moving things, like we were saying, out of the hermetically sealed box of your mind and out into the world, out onto a piece of paper, out into your hands, out to be an actual thing. That alone is alchemical, right? We've taken something that didn't exist and made it something that exists.
Yes.
That's magic, right? And then you go one more and you show it to someone else, or you share it with someone else. And then it changes because they've looked at it, right? And they are changed by it. And then you are changed because they are changed. And then like you get this sort of infinity loop, this sort of Moebius strip of like, oh, I do a thing and there's a result, and then it has an impact on a person, and that has a result for them, and then that has a result for me because it's amazing. And the smallest things, you think, well, who cares? Well, you don't know yet who cares.
Yeah.
Let's find out.
Yeah. Yes, let's find out. So I want to talk about a few particular words and themes that came up in your book, and I'm really excited about getting through the whole thing and can't wait for other people to get their hands on it. So this is really exciting. Talk about then now what you call the spotlight syndrome and how can we counteract that?
Spotlight syndrome is just that thing where you've messed up, like you had a vulnerable moment, you've stumbled over your words, you've worn the wrong thing, you whatever it is you've done, and you think everybody's noticed. Everybody's noticing, everybody's looking at me, this is so embarrassing. It's a psychological phenomenon. We tend to over anticipate and over feel that scrutiny, when in fact, if we did a real life study and said, what did you notice about that person? What did you notice about this person? Nobody's noticing, nobody cares. Like, nobody noticed that you stumbled over your words. Nobody noticed that you wore the wrong thing. Nobody noticed that your skirt is held up with duct tape. Nobody noticed that, you've served children dinosaur chicken nuggets 10 days in a row. Like, no one cares. And this, going back to this thing about visibility, it's hard as I noticed that all humans throughout all human history, throughout all cultures, have a message that says, don't be weird. Don't think too much of yourself. Don't toot your own horn. Don't get too big for your britches. The nail that stands up will be hammered down. Tall poppy syndrome, whatever it was in your family.
Yeah.
So we get very self-conscious about like, well, I don't want to. And again, we're tribal. We have to live in a group. Our survival is dependent on the group. So of course we want people to think well of us. Of course we want to be seen as contributive and helpful. And, that's good. That's people are like, I'm a people pleaser. I'm like, by design. Again, not a character defect. You were made this way, right? And then we get the simultaneous message of like, be yourself, be you, be unique, let your freak flag fly. Like, okay, so it's like, be you, but not too much you, be unique, but not too weird, be strong, but not overpowering, be confident, but not cocky, be beautiful, but don't know it. It's like, okay, now I'm just confused and upset. I don't know what to do. Right? We tie ourselves up in a knot. And the fact of the matter is, like I said, that most people are not paying attention to you at all. And that's fine. I remember when my first book came out, and really, if you want to know who your true friends are, and if you want to have a accelerated spiritual growth program, do a book launch.
Mm-hmm.
It's a lot.
Yes.
And you'll be amazed at the people who show up for you in ways that you never thought they could. And the people that you were sure would show up 100%, and they all of a sudden aren't anywhere to be found. Like, interesting. But so it was my first book. I was freaking out. And of course, the list of things that should have been done that day, should have been done yesterday, should have been done 3 weeks ago, should have been done 3 years ago. Like, but my family came out, and I was living in California at the time, so we went whale watching. So, right, go out on the boat, see the whales. Beautiful day on the water, and just being in or near a large body of water is good for me. And sure enough, we saw whales. And the minute I saw the whales, I was like, oh, that's right. This planet is almost entirely water. It's not really our planet, it's theirs. And that whale, I am a speck on a speck on a speck. That whale does not care that I wrote a book. That whale is not concerned with my book sales. or how many 5-star reviews I get. Like, it was so, the beautiful indifference of nature was so calming to me.
Yes.
And all of a sudden I was invited to just be there, to stop worrying so much about what everybody else thought or didn't think,
Mm-hmm.
and all the other things over which I have absolutely no control anyway.
Yes.
So the proper response to the inevitable is relaxation. You know, I was just reading my little daily, I have kind of a sort of little love affair going on with Stoicism these days. And I think it's Epictetus who, says most people spend way too much time worrying about all the things that they cannot control, and not nearly enough time spending time on the things that they actually can control.
Yes, exactly.
So that's the invitation: is all that stuff you can't control, you can't control it. So get over it. Move
That's
on.
beautiful.
Say a prayer. God, of course, we want things to be better in the world, but also, what can your hands and feet accomplish in the next 15 minutes?
Yeah. Yeah. So there are two things that I'm going to just touch on that share. Thank you. And that is as you said, that kind of the power of nature. Not only did your perspective change being in it, but you were much more than connected to this beautiful source of energy that nature provides. You mentioned hugging a tree. I love hugging trees and talking to trees, and being in that space creates the opportunity for us to get out of our own way a lot of the time. And I love that was such a beautiful example of it, how quickly you were able to let go of, you know what, that whale doesn't care. I love that. Now, the other side that I want to pull out from that, Sam, is you are also, my background is in the music industry. I used to be on stage a lot, backing vocals, mostly studio sessions. I fronted sometimes. But we speak about spotlight. And in most cases, no one cares what if you, like you said, all the examples, you messed up on a word or you did this or whatever. In that context, how do you help people with this? Because they are there to see you and to notice and to pay attention. So I'm just curious in that particular context, how you would help people with maybe it's not spotlight syndrome, but handling
but there's actually a spotlight.
Yeah, exactly. But helping
spotlight.
them navigate the same internal, like everyone cares about what is happening in this moment, and so on and so forth. Just curiously, because you're one of those creatives and artistic people who will have people around listening to this. So I'd love to know your thoughts on that.
Yeah. The first thing I want to say is, for any parents out there whose children look like they're threatening to want to study the performing arts and you're afraid for them, don't be.
Yeah.
Don't be. The best people in the world are in the performing arts. Theater teachers save lives. Music teachers save lives. The other weird kids save lives. And everything you learn about, first of all, just being willing to get up in front of a room of people and speak, which most people can't do that alone. So the fact that they're developing that skill alone is worth its weight in gold. But everything else they learn about language, about breath control, about energy, about managing nerves and stage fright, about working with other people, in corporate, they call it teamwork. In the theater, we call it ensemble, what you learn about rejection, what you learn about taking notes, what you learn about history and costumes and body language, and all of it is so valuable. So the chances that your child will actually pursue a career in the performing arts is probably quite small. So again, don't worry about it. Don't feel like, oh no, they're never going to make a living. No, they will. They'll be fine. And I have a friend who was a theater director, and he ended up at a fairly big job in Apple. And he said every time he's doing an interview, he can always tell who did theater and performance experience. And he's like, I think it should just be mandatory, 2 years in the Peace Corps. It should be 2 years in the theater, 2 years in the performing arts. I don't care who you are.
Yeah, exactly. Right? Oh.
So yay, you, and for that. And yeah, I think sometimes our success happens when two ideas that seem to oppose one another are happening at the same time. So on the one hand, as we were talking about, we really care what other people think, and we really don't want to let people down, and we really don't want to look like an ass, and we really want to do well and be seen to do well. And on the other hand, part of us doesn't really care what anybody thinks anyway. Right. So can we bring these two ideas closer together? You know, like, and I'm moving my hands like I got energy balls in two hands, and they're like, and as you bring them closer together, they both resist each other, but also are attracted to each other. And there's this like sort of tension, and we get success by surfing the tension of those two things.
Yeah. Yeah.
We get success, you know, as performers. Part of what people love about us is our vulnerability, is the live experience, is being there when someone misses a cue or drops a glass or, you know, and I think one part of it, and this is really where we separate professionalism from everybody else, but this is a leadership thing. You cannot make other people emotionally responsible for you.
Exactly.
So I can get up and have a vulnerable moment as long as I'm not asking the room to take care of me. Right. As long as I'm not standing up there apologizing over and over again for things not being well, it's to the point where everybody feels like they have to go, no, it's okay. It's okay. You're okay. Like, no, own what you're doing. Yeah. It was always one thing, you know, I used to sing a lot in church, and I don't love to sing in the world, but I love to sing in church because it wasn't a performance, it was worship, right? Yeah. And that made it okay for me. And definitely gave me that feeling of like, whatever's coming through is what's coming through. The way it's going to go is the way it's going to go. I am not really in charge of this.
Yes.
And it's not about me and the experience I'm having. I am a conduit and a vessel for other people. And I noticed that sometimes people who put out really crummy work do really well. I noticed that, you know, we don't love the music that we love because it's perfect. We don't love the movies or performances because they're perfect. We don't love the books that we love because they're perfect books. You know, my list of favorite movies has a lot of movies on it that I think everybody else would go, that movie's not very good. I'd be like, I know, I love it. I love this movie, and I will watch it every single time it's on. I don't care how many times I've seen it. I will watch it again because I love it. Something about it in all of its broken cheesiness. Like,
yeah, you're speaking my language right now. Right?
So
who says it isn't good? Who says? You can say that if you want. I'm not asking you to watch it with me. See you in 2 hours.
That's right. You go watch something improving if you're so inclined. You know? I'll sit here with my popcorn.
I love that.
Right? So yeah, I think the idea is, you know, what are people paying for? What, you know, there's definitely, and again, that tension of like having high standards and wanting to do well. And at some point you got to just let it go and let what happened happen.
Yeah.
One of the most profound experiences I ever had on stage was, I was in the middle of a show by a gentleman named Stephen Dietz, who's a wonderful playwright, and he wrote a show called God's Country, which was about the rise of the neo-Nazi movement in America. And at the time we were doing this was probably 20 years ago, we thought it was like a historical piece. How sad that we were so wrong. And so we all played a bunch of different characters. And in this one scene, I was a lawyer in a courtroom, and we're doing the scene, and I went up on my lines, which for those of you who are in the theater means I forgot my lines, right? Now, I never forget my lines. Never doesn't happen to me. And if it does happen to me, I spent 20 years working as a professional improviser. I can make something up. Not in that moment, I couldn't. Nothing. My brain was empty. And there I am on stage. And it's a courtroom scene. So it's not like my scene partner in the witness stand could say, weren't you going to ask me about the, no. There's nowhere to go. So I stand there for what feels like 10 hours. And finally, I think, we'll just say the previous. So I repeat the cue. I say, tell me again, you know, and I say my line, and he says my cue back. And again, another 10 hours passes. And I finally remember the line, and we get done with the scene, and we get off stage. And 5 people come to me like, I don't think anybody noticed. I don't think I'm like, oh no, everybody noticed. I 100% guarantee everyone in that room noticed. And it put me on this path of like, and why? Because all of a sudden there was a person on stage who genuinely did not know what she was going to say next.
Mm-hmm.
And why did that feel so different than acting?
Mm-hmm.
And it put me down this whole path of my acting career that was so interesting. And so, like, how can I put myself in that place of openness and vulnerability and presence
Yes.
and still turn in a performance that somebody's going to pay money for?
Yeah, that's beautiful. You think the thing that I pick up from your you were talking about singing in church feeling different to, you know, you offering something else, and what I often taught and what certainly worked for me is that all of it is an offering. It's an offering of you and all that you are in that moment. Yes, some of it's scripted. You're learning an arrangement, you're learning music. There are parts that are not improv, but ultimately it's still an offering of you. And if you can come into a place and recognize that offering is perfect just as it is, with all the flaws and the messing up and the so on and so forth. And then, of course, as you said, in the professional setting, have the skills to fumble through a mistake well or to improvise and all of that, then what an honor for someone to witness your moment of messing up and getting through it. This is often what worked for me. And when I changed the word performance to offering in my mind, everything changed in my performance. And that's what I taught most students that I worked with in the music industry and performance related particularly, is like, well, what if you were just offering you in that moment?
That's right.
You know, and you're practiced, but it's still you. And it really shifted the perspective. So I love that we can allow ourselves to be in the spotlight in many different ways and just recognize that you know, we don't have to be liked by everyone.
And we're not, and and this is one of the things I'm really digging this word offering, because it does sort of feel like this is my offering. If you don't care for the offering, walk
That's
on.
okay. Yeah.
Oh, find your people, you know, God bless the unsubscribes, you know.
That's it. Yes, 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 and more yes. Oh my gosh, so beautiful. I mean, there's so much more I want to ask because your book is amazing. I would like to ask you before we wrap up though, like if there's one thing that people could take away that you would want people to take away from your book, is there anything that stands out?
The thing that underlies, I think, all of my work is a really intense awareness that we are not here forever. We do not have an unlimited amount of time in which to do our work. And we do not know when the deadline for that is.
Yeah.
I'm always a little obsessed, you know, every winter someone is killed by like a falling icicle in Chicago, or, you know, somebody has a plane crash on their house, you know, like those weird random events where it's like they're just da 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 da, da and then they're dead.
Yeah, that's it, done.
That's it, end of story. Like,
that's a different type of get it done, folks. We're not talking about that here.
I just have this very acute awareness that that's all of us, that, you know,
Yes.
there's going to become a moment when we're not going to be here anymore to do our work. And I don't think any of us want to be haunting our own memorial service and have people say, well, you know, she was very well behaved. Well, his tile grout was impeccable. They were really good at running all those errands. Like, that's not what we want. We want people to say, like, oh, that person got all the juice out of that orange. You know, that person shared themselves and shared their gifts and showed up messy, showed up 15 minutes at a time, showed up being as loving a person as they knew how to be. That's what I want. So I want you all to honor your gifts and the person you are, and especially if it's just 15 minutes a day, because we need it. We need you.
Yeah.
We need you.
Exercise that muscle, and those kind of mini practices and mini miracles and blessings, they all add up, you know. So beautiful. Oh, Samantha, thank you
Really,
so much.
we have nothing to talk about. This has been really tedious.
I know. It's one of those things that I thought 15 minutes and then we did another 15 and then, oh my gosh, another 15. I'm super grateful that I was able to jump on with you. And I'm so grateful. Thank you. I celebrate you in the release of your new book. I celebrate you, all that you are and all that you are doing to help people to get unstuck. We need to just flow with this energy of life and live and thrive. And I'm just so grateful that you're doing this beautiful work in the world.
Thank you. Well, thank you so much for the conversation and for being here. And thanks everybody for listening.
Thank you. And so I'm going to wrap up with one final question that I'd like to ask all of my guests. And that is, what is your soulful sound to the world? That is a self-prayer or desire that you wish upon the world.
At the bottom of all my emails, it says, by the way, you look really great today.
Oh, that's so beautiful. I love that. And we're going to hum into that yumminess. Take it, everyone. Receive it. Receive it. Thank you so much, Samantha. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks so much for tuning in. Your support, your comments, and everything is truly incredible. And we're only at the beginning of this awesome journey together. If you love this episode, hit that like and subscribe button and make sure to check out our other episodes. Thanks so much for being with us today. Sending you love, healing, and sound wherever you are.